Snow White's prince does not have an official name. In the film and basically all merchandise, he is simply known as the prince. However, like the Beast, you might sometimes see him referred to online as Florian, or less commonly Ferdinand. Ferdinand comes from this quote by Shirley Temple at the 1938 Oscars.
I'm sure the boys and girls in the whole world are going to be very happy when they find out that the daddy of Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, Ferdinand, Mickey Mouse, and all the others, is going to get this beautiful statue.
Some people who've heard this quote have thought that Shirley Temple was referring to Snow White's prince when she says Ferdinand. We actually know for sure that she wasn't, because Disney was receiving two Oscars this night, one for Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs, and the other for Ferdinand the Bull. But over 70 years later, some people thought that Disney Latin America legitimized this misconception by posting a now deleted YouTube video where they referred to the prince as Fernando, which is actually pretty similar to where the name Florian seems to come from. Supposedly, it was stated on a Disney France TV spot, but just like Fernando, there's no way to actually watch this now, and there's very little evidence that it ever existed to begin with the earliest reference to this TV spot being the Disney Wiki in the 2010s with no legitimate source. But whether or not this information actually came from Disney France or just random people online, it's believed to be a reference to the 1916 silent film Snow White, where the prince is called Prince Florian. And it is true that the Disney version took some inspiration from this film, although certainly not his name, since he was only ever referred to as the prince or Snow Prince during Disney's production. And again, the name Florian doesn't show up until almost a century later. All that being said, Disney has produced some media where Snow White's love interest has an explicit name, like David in Once Upon a Time, or Jonathan in the live-action Snow White. But these are clearly separate versions that are not meant to build on the canon of the animated Snow White. Jonathan isn't even a prince. The closest Disney has ever gotten to giving this character a name is in the 1938 comic where Snow White asks who he is, and he says, "As for my name, I like the one you gave me, Prince Buckethead," which she called him when he had a bucket on his head. And obviously this is a joke that's kind of even poking fun of the fact that he doesn't have a name, which it's perfectly fine that he doesn't have one. He doesn't need a name. The whole point of his character is to be a symbol of hope and happiness for Snow White. And obviously I'm not stopping anyone from calling him whatever they want. I'm just explaining where these names come from, their unofficial nature, and why I would not refer to him by either of those names, because they are unnecessary, especially when it comes to analysis and trying to understand this film. As with the Beast or Princess Ages, I think fandom culture just really wants these characters to have biographical details, and Florian just happened to be the name that stuck for this character in these spaces.